October meeting, isn't it? Yes. I will read the civic affirmation. We gather today to duly and faithfully carry out our duties to the best of our judgment and ability, the advancement of this district and the benefit of all of our community and fellow citizens. And the Coorong District Council members acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians of the land and waters, the Nurrungeri people, whose ancestral lands are on which we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country and pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nation people. Thank you, councillors. Item 1, apologies, I have none. I would note, just for everyone's benefit, that councillors Taylor and Roundtree are on Zoom today. Councillors' acknowledgements. Has anyone got anyone wishes to acknowledge? No one signalled to me, so thank you. Can someone move the confirmation of the minutes, item 2, including the confidential minutes held on the 21st of September 2021, please? Councillor Qualman, Councillor Land, I saw. Any discussion around that?
Yes.
Yes, sorry. Right. Councillor Roundtree.
Just have a question. Has a date been or can a date be set to review the condition and compliance of the Canalpan public toilets? So I talked about there being a review and just wondering if a date can be set on that. Or has a date been set?
There's a date for the review of the condition of the Canalpan public toilets being set.
So through you, Mayor, we have already an old condition report, is that right? We have an existing condition report that probably needs updating, councillor. It hasn't been set yet.
Okay, so in the minutes it says a date would be set to review the conditions and compliance of the toilets. I was just wondering when that would be. But anyway, that's okay. We can move on from that.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
All right, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Delith is in charge of the minutes today, so she's asked me to go gently, slowly. Councillors, adjourned business items. We have 3 and we will deal with them first. So the first one is in relation to the motion without notice around the Coorong and Lower Lakes Infrastructure Committee. You'll note there's a response from the CEO around a direction we could take for that. So given the difficulty of going back and finding out where we got to in this debate, Councillor Hill, I think, you're the mover of this one from memory.
That's correct. Yes.
Do you wish to continue with this motion, or with the permission of the seconder, would you withdraw it given the report?
We're having some additional discussion around what's going to happen moving forward with this. I'd be happy to withdraw my motion.
Councillor Bland, are you happy with?
I understand the potential need to withdraw it. However, like Councillor Hill, I have read the recommendation and alternative and believe that the money was in fact raised for the drought at the time, with the ongoing funds to be kept for the potential to need that into the future. This does not reflect that, and I believe that many of the community will in fact be quite upset about the money that they worked hard to fundraise for during a particularly difficult period of time will be spent on whatever project the Progress Association may choose. So while I honour the projects that they may choose, I do believe that the money needs to be kept, whether that is with the Progress Association or the forming of another community committee.
So, Councillor, there's an alternative recommendation there, and since we're on the subject, we can stay with a motion. I think the point is, do you agree with the mover to withdraw? Given that we can go on and discuss it right
Correct.
now. So I'll take that motion has been withdrawn, please, Dylan. So I'll allow anyone to move a motion, or perhaps I'll even open perhaps the CEO to address this subject initially around where we might go with this.
So through you, Mayor, to add context to the conversation and to Councillor Bland's comments, there was never any intention to spend the money. My understanding was that the Progress Association wanted to know what to do with it, and Councillor Hill's initial question was, how do we make a decision on that? So my conversations with the Progress Association were about what to do with it in the best possible way, reflecting why it was collected in the first place. There are some people, as I understand, in that group who want to hold it for the next drought event and leave it there. I don't see anything wrong with that as long as there's consideration of the issue and that there's general agreement within the Progress Association and the community that that's okay. I don't think it has to be spent. My understanding was that people wanted to do something with the money. But that leaving it there has absolutely no, there's no difficulty with that. If the Progress Association are happy to leave it there in some way.
So councillors, if you would look at the alternative recommendation in the agenda, perhaps adding that, perhaps a further movement of that money be brought back, at least for our, not endorsement or approval, but knowledge would be, if that was to satisfy you, Councillor Bland, and your concerns.
My concern is the words that council worked with Meningie Progress Association to find a solution. And given that I would like to see councillors or at least one or two members of the previous committee, which wasn't a committee of council, be at a meeting where that is discussed.
So you could put that into a motion if you like.
I'm happy to consider that. I just think that if I might just qualify that, having listened to a discussion with some Progress Association members and very good community members, there seemed to be a whole range of little projects that they were very keen to have done, and I respect that, but this money was specifically about drought.
So remembering, councillors, we have no control legally to tell that group what to do with that money. That there is no way. We can suggest we can work with them and our concerns can be raised and we can be at the table, but at the end of the day, that money is sitting in the Progress Association's account and it is there legitimately.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I probably would slightly dispute that because they took it under care and control from council when the section committee was put in abeyance. And it was a section committee. At that point in time, all monies had to be approved, even though the money was raised by the community. Once it became a section committee of council, that money then had to be approved through the committee by council. So I agree that it's grey, particularly the minute is loose as to when it was handed back to Progress Association for care and control because they were the only committee of the community. So I think I don't want to go down this track. In 5 years' time, we have a drought. So
Having it this year, councillor, don't have to worry about 5 years.
Councillor
Hill, yes.
My recollection was the money was parked there because there was nowhere else to put it. It wasn't given to the Progress
council
Association
didn't want to play with it.
and council couldn't hold it. So it is in a very, a strange place at the moment. So if we're going to work with Progress Association, because I do know for a fact the previous chairman was adamant that he wanted the money spent. So he's no longer there. We have a new chairman, or new chair, sorry. In fact, there's no actual chair. It's going to be a floating chair position at the moment. But I know at the Meningie business meeting, which was followed by a Progress Association meeting, there were several community members there that were very passionate about the fact that that money was raised during the last drought and it needs to be kept for a potential future drought. So any solution that we find with the Progress Association, I think that strong community sentiment needs to be taken into consideration.
How do you want to word that into a motion?
I would be very careful about a motion at all, Mayor.
There's no motion. I'll go to Councillor Yench next, but if you haven't, no one wants to move a motion, it will simply go back to the Progress Association to continue working it out. Councillor Yench, will you have a go?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with the previous two councillors. And my recollection of that period was that it was put to the Meningie Progress because, well, they were named because the money there was concerns at the time that the money could be dispensed across the district when it was raised specifically for lake issues, water issues. So it was a way of tagging it at the time that it belonged into that area of council. But it was a very strong feeling that it should have been kept for future drought type activity. It was not to be looked at for projects.
Councillor Arthur, I'm awaiting a motion on my back.
Mr Mayor, because the Section 41 committee can't have old money any rate, so we've really got nothing to say with this. Where the money come from, it's gone to the Progress Association, whether it was run by a committee of council, we are not under legislation. The Section 41 committee cannot hold money. So we cannot direct to the Progress Association or anyone else what they do with that money. It should be up to the Progress Association and maybe the citizens of Meningie to work it out.
Thank you. If I might, Mr Mayor.
You're getting close to a motion, I hope.
Just to clarify the point about the section committee, the words that were used, if I remember, and I'm not going to try and quote it, were that the committee was asked to go in abeyance, not disbanded, in abeyance, and that the money, because the council didn't hold the money in a holding account because they don't exist for the future, was why it went to Progress. Someone needed to hold the money, was how it worked. But like everything, time changes and people move. That's where we've been caught at the moment. So I'm quite happy to looking at the council, Lakes councillors, work with the Meningie Progress Association to find a solution to the unspent money, Save Your Lakes funds raised by the community and currently in the care of the Meningie Association.
So you're removing what was listed as the alternative recommendation, but you're adding after the words council, including Lakes Ward's councillors.
Yes.
Work with. So it's just adding Lakes Ward councillors after the words that council.
So taking out dispensing.
Yes.
And council.
We
Dispense.
have a look at this, or aren't our drop downs working?
No, sorry, they're not working yet.
Okay.
A part needs to be ordered, through you, Mayor. Sorry, I should have mentioned that at the beginning. A part needs to be ordered. We're just debating whether it's worth that or replacing them.
So I'm taking it the two councillors on Zoom can not see this or can see this then?
None of us can.
Nobody can, Mayor.
Nobody can, except me.
Yeah.
Lucky you.
Read it out.
Oh, yes.
Slowly to us, Mr Mayor.
Once, Phyllis. You're happy?
Yes.
Solution. You happy, Bridget? Word it. I'll read it out. We'll read her up. The councillors, I'm going to read it out since you haven't got anything on the screen today. The council, including the Lakes Ward councillors, work with the Meningie Progress Association to find a solution to the unspent Save Our Lakes funds raised by the community and currently in the care of the Meningie Progress Association. Councillor Bland, is that your words?
Correct.
Thank you. So you're moving that way.
I am.
Councillor Hill is the seconder. Either you wish to speak to it.
I think we've discussed it.
Discussed it enough now. Anyone else for or against? Councillor Arthur.
I'd like to make the comment again. I don't really think the council should be involved in it.
The council is not, but some councillors can be.
Putting it through as a motion of council, so the council are involved now.
Well, we've always been there. So at this stage, that's just the Lakes Ward councillors can, as members of the community, have their influence. Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Mayor. With all due respect, why is it the Lakes Ward councillors? Surely, I just don't grasp 100% why councillors are involved at all. If a councillor sits on the committee, for example, they have a right of input, to comment, but surely it's a decision of the Progress Association. If the money was given to the Progress Association to manage, what involvement does a council have?
So if we review what Councillor Bland said, that the committee was put in abeyance. So in terms of some level of oversight, the councillors, since they are the ward councillors, they, unless they were members of the Progress Association, wouldn't get a vote in how this was spent, but they might be able to assist in the discussions with the Progress Association.
So through you, Mayor, I'm sorry, I'm still confused. Why would councillors be asked to assist in making a decision?
Well, they might not be, but they can be.
So is that good practice? Or, I was told that really if you're sitting on the Progress Association as a councillor, you're there to offer advice or information regarding the council. But this is, if the money was given to the Progress Association because the original committee folded, effectively you're asking the Progress Association to handle the money or to sit on it, if you like, until some further use for it came up. So I'm still confused as to why 3 potential councillors would be there to offer their advice or their recommendation. I still don't see why it is not. If you've given them the money in the first place, or whoever it was who originally gave them the money, why are you not just allowing them now to make the decision on their own?
So, councillor, we move into the area of what's the role of a councillor in the community. We sort of just move it away from this discussion, and at some stage people do ask us to offer some advice, sometimes around some things. This is formalising that a little bit more, given that council at one point did have carriage of the money in those difficult times. My view is that the motion's not out of order. If you think it is, you can vote against it, I suppose. Councillor Rountree. You need to unmute, Councillor Rountree.
Apologies.
Start
Was there
again.
an Okay,
You're
can you hear me
now.
now?
Yes, thank you.
Was there an original minute of council that gave the money to the Progress Association? Is there a minute that sits here having done that particular part of the process?
I think I sent that out, didn't I?
Yes.
We were of the view there probably was.
Right, so then what we're basically doing is almost undoing that minute in that we're doing something different. Is that how you see it?
No, I don't believe so.
It's the interpretation of
It's just-
the intent.
Right.
If the councillors wish to work with the Meningie Progress Association and council to find a solution, they will. But at the end of the day, it'll be the Progress Association's decision, councillor.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else in this debate? You can close, councillor, please.
Just in terms of some of the loose terminology that's been there, I'd like to clarify that the committee was put in abeyance, maybe some time ago, because the drought had ended, with the anticipation that at some point it would be needed again. The money was given to the Meningie Progress Association, being the only major group in Meningie at that point in time, and still is, that was able to hold the funds on behalf of basically the community for the potential of another drought. And that was the intent. Whether that is clear, obviously it is not. that money still, in theory, belongs to the community or as a fighting fund when it is needed in the future.
Okay, we've completed debate. The motion, I'll read it again, since you haven't got it on the screens, I'm afraid. Moved, Councillor Bland, second, Councillor Hill, that council, including the Lakes Ward councillors, work with the Menengi Progress Association to find a solution to the unspent Save Our Lakes funds raised by the community and currently in the care of the Menengi Progress Association. Those voting for the motion, please show. Those voting against, so that's carried, but with only Councillor Taylor voted against that motion, so all the other 8 councillors voted for it. Carried. Okay, second agenda item is Waste Services Management. Councillor Arthur, there is a report there around that, and Councillor, the staff of Councillor Arthur, the staff have given a recommendation. Do you wish to follow that, or do you wish to take a different path? Otherwise, I'll pick up debate.
I still believe we should be doing it, probably not at this stage until we get the new waste management system in place. I'm very interested in the report here. There seems to be a very big emphasis on the original report and the one here about Section 7, which was getting rid of excess funds. You know, I can't understand why there was so much emphasis on that when they knew we haven't got a fund any rate. This was about basing one. As being in Section 8 or 10 instead of Section 8, if anyone's tried to read the Local Government Act and get it from where it is right, I thought it was 8, but when I've checked back and gone through all the pages, and yeah, it is in 10. So it's very hard, but it specifically says in there, you shall impose and you should have a fund. I'm quite prepared to let this lay on the table until we do the review of the waste management and make it part of, or withdraw the motion with the seconders' approval, but we'll bring it up further when we do the waste management review.
Seek governance support around whether we can get an adjourned motion to lay on the table for a period of time.
Through you, Mayor. There's a couple of things, Councillor Arthur. One is that your understanding of that particular section, I have to, with all due respect, is not correct. It is not about setting up a fund. It's about what you would do with it if you have a fund and you want to dissolve it. We don't have a fund set up, a reserve set up. So we have no need to even refer to that section because it's not like we've got something we want to dissolve. We don't have that reserve there in the first place. The second issue that's important is that with a reserve, it's worked on the premise that whatever service we're delivering to the residents is based on either a commercial activity or a cost recovery plus some money. So we would have no money to put in a reserve because the cost to deliver our waste services is more than we actually collect from the ratepayer. It's not a cost recovery service and it's not a commercial service. So having a reserve fund might be fine, but we would have nothing to put into it apart from ratepayers' funds because we don't make any money from any waste disposal services.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do, CEO, with all due respect.
We actually collect money, but it costs us more to deliver the service than it does from what we raise. It is not a cost recovery exercise.
So, Councillor,
This is where it's going to be very interesting, Mr. Mayor, is when this is presented, because it's always been a bone of contention. No one's ever been able to see the contract and what we actually pay for.
Yeah, so this is, yeah, I take your point, Councillor. Noting that we're probably some months away from, I think we've had it in different form, the information around our waste management system, would you be prepared to withdraw the motion for the time being? And I'll acknowledge that you may bring it up early next year once we learn more. I'm trying to think, can we have an adjourned motion lie on the table? I'm looking at Ashley and I think we get it.
To make it easy, I'll withdraw the motion with the backing of my seconder, Councillor Thom.
agree to withdraw it. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'm sorry that it's a bit of an unusual area, but if we could do it that way in the short term, that'd be great, please. We move to number 3, which is also an agenda item of yours, councillor. Given the information is somewhat similar to the last one, prepare to do the same in the short term around that?
Yeah, well, this actually runs into the same as the previous one.
Yeah, I
So
acknowledge
I'll
that.
withdraw that
With the permission of the
with the
seconder.
permission of the seconder, which is Councillor Roundtree.
Councillor Roundtree, we understand that you're giving me approval there.
Yes.
So
Yes,
item
ma'am.
3 of the agenda items is also just withdrawn in the short term, or withdrawn, but as we know, we are in a regional tender at the moment around waste services, and when that offer becomes clearer, we can bring all this back if required. Thank you, councillors.
Can I just make one statement?
You can make one very short statement while I write, yes.
One quick. It was very interesting where the Mount Gambier Council have now put a waste management charge on. They had it in their fixed charge before, the same as the Coorong Council. They have they have costed their waste management over the last 2 years, and it's cost $200. So it was very specific in their rates notice that we have taken $200 off of your fixed charge and put you a separate charge for this as per the Local Government Act, and opened a reserve fund as per the Local Government Act. It was very interesting when we put our waste management charge on. I think it was $225 the first year, and out of the goodness of our heart, we took $45 off the fixed charge. So it was actually, we had a rate increase for those people who use the rubbish collection of $180 per year.
Interesting history, councillor. And that's partially why this council's moved down the path of reducing the fixed charge.
Yeah.
Okay, I've moved to item 4, minute action list, councillors. Don't rush me.
Yes, I've got a question, Mayor.
Yeah, sorry. Councillor Roundtree.
I'm rushing you. 09821, the toilet at the playground in Tailem Bend. I would actually like to see a design and quote produced for this toilet, as I just think the numbers of up to 200,000 for a standalone toilet is excessively high. I thought we were looking at some sort of composting toilet, or even could we look at even a second-hand, a portable one that we leave in place? I just think that these numbers are big and probably supposed to be a bit daunting, in the hope that we won't have an appetite to follow it through. But I think when you've used that playground with kids, having a toilet close by is so handy for the families that use the playground, that I think we ought to be looking at something else that doesn't need to. I mean, if the Tailem Bend toilets cost 300,000 to up to 200,000 for a standalone one in that playground, just seems really the wrong number. So I would like to see that, some more design and quote produced for that.
So, councillor, that particular area at the south end of the Tailem Bend playground has got some other, I suppose, quotes, and some work may be done, subject to that list of councillors' priorities, including a new fence around the playground at some point, and it is somewhat tied also to the future of the old CFS station, and we still haven't received confirmation of what condition we will get that back with. If you note that the review's in November, I take on board what you say. I would be surprised, I'm looking at the director, if we would be allowed to have a composting toilet in that part of town. He's got that nodding look on his head. So there's several complications. I know what you're saying, but it'd be best to wait until a bit more of a plan is drawn up for that area, if you wish. Go on.
No worries. I have a couple of others, if that's okay. 10121, the council member training register. Originally, a report was due in July, 21 September. Just wanting to know how that report is progressing.
Through you, Mayor.
Yes, certainly.
We talked about that this morning, actually, Councillor Roundtree. We have the spreadsheet that we've always kept, and we're going to put that up on the public just as a PDF, so that it's there. We know that with the local government reforms that there will be some changes in that area. So we'll leave it as we do it now and put it up as a PDF. There is nothing in there that's not public knowledge already. And once the local government reform provide us with some details about whether there's a prescribed way of doing it, we will do it. We also know that from next year, I think we'll have to put those details in the annual review as well. So those changes are afoot.
Thank
Your
you.
third question, councillor.
Third or fourth, 06721 Fred's Landing, in relation to the upcoming growth strategy. Have we locked in a date for this sort of growth strategy meeting? And as someone from council keeping a note of the different suggestions that have come up over the past 12 months, so that we start with a bit of a list, because I think that over the, we've certainly mentioned a few things that would be good for the growth strategy.
So the growth strategy is out for tender and has closed, Miles? It's closed and is being assessed. And we have a list of items that have come up from council. We keep that just with our strategic list that we go through when we're looking at grants and all sorts of things. So that list is there already. Miles,
And my last question, oh, sorry.
Well, I'll just add that I would expect in November or early December that the consultants that'll prepare the growth strategy will meet with elected members, and that's the first meeting I want to have is with elected members, so that we can canvass some of these issues and put together essentially your expectations of the growth strategy. That's the first place I want to start.
Thank
Actually,
you.
the growth strategy is in your diaries already, councillors, the briefing.
Oh, excellent. Beautiful. Thank you. My last question is 31120 to do with the CWS Reserve Fund. How is the Financial Services Coordinator going with developing a reporting process for the 21-22 budget, seeing we've already started this budget year?
So we're coming back to you. There's already a specific budget and it's shown as a note in the current financials. I think we're coming back to you in December, councillor, with a more comprehensive report.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor Bland,
Can I just have a follow-up question to the councillor education comment?
a minute, yes.
And that is around how you're capturing Zoom education or alternative education that's done elsewhere by councillors.
Unless you tell us about it, we won't know.
Basically.
Well, there's no onus on any of you to tell us if you're doing something personally. It's only when we've arranged it and it's paid for, I suppose, by council. But if it's something that you've done from your own volition, then it's entirely up to you if you want to let us know to put it on the spreadsheet.
I think where it mirrors what is needed here, or in some of the Zoom stuff that comes out, is not necessarily going to be captured either. Registered LGA, you're not going to get it.
So through you, Mayor.
Depends if you consider that training or just information.
I consider ICAP training.
Yeah.
So you meant the other thing, I suppose, councillors, is what is the intent of keeping that information? And probably it's more about tracking how much you've spent and whether we're going to run out of budget. In terms of anything else, it's entirely up to you if you choose to do some training. It's not like it's a particular interest to us, but if you have ICAC's a good one. If you can tick off that you've done that training, that's important. We would record that because that was something we probably organised anyway. But there are so many webinars out there now that you can access more freely than in any time in history, I think. If you want us to record yours, just send us a little note. We'll put it on the spreadsheet.
Thank you.
You done?
I'm done.
Councillor Ling?
On the same subject, I actually query, it's a vast difference between listening and then actually being accredited on many of these courses. If you do a course, you should be, let's go back to old school, examined on your knowledge that you acquired out of it.
Those days have passed, councillor.
What in nursing?
Just saying.
No, even in bullying in nursing, this certainly still check. Anyway.
Any further minute action list queries? Councillor Roundtree?
Just following up on the questions around training, I think the CEO is correct in the intent of this was to work out what training council is paying for and the cost of that training and making sure we stay within budget. I think if councillors have done extra personal development that they've paid for or not paid for, or it's been free, then they're more than able to put that on the list if they want that documented. Otherwise, really, this is just about keeping track of what council's paying for and who's doing the training and what the training was and benefit.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? I move on to questions with notice. Number 5.1, Councillor Taylor, there is a response around your question. Would you to add?
No, I'm happy with all of the responses. Thank you.
So you're happy also with your other two questions
I am.
on notice?
Yes.
You are? Well, that involved the locking system at the Taylor Men toilet, which will be resolved, and the potential footpaths at East Wellington.
Mr Mayor.
Mr. Councillor Qualman.
Thank you. I just want to comment. I attended the Sporting Hub meeting and was informed that all the parties involved up there have come into agreements, and they're going to form a steering committee to come back to council, the CEO and relevant managers with a desired intent to create a new uniform lease involving all the parties.
And my reading of the process, Councillor, is it's moving forward gently.
Yes, that's correct. And with reference to Councillor Taylor's second question, and I had a few complaints about the same thing, it mentions only the locks, Mr Mayor. What about the automatic hand washers? How do they get affected when the power goes off?
To you, Mayor. Director, that's because that's why the locks go, isn't it? So you can't use the toilets.
Through you, Mayor, the plumbing still works when the power's off. It's just that the locking systems fail locked rather than failed open, which is going to be changed.
Thank you.
That, Mr Mayor.
Certainly, Councillor Hill.
Councillor Bland and I just went for a little wander across to the Taylor Men toilets.
The police bus left.
We just noticed, we're going, how do we get this water to work out? And then took us ages to work out that, oh, you had to look down and it says press for the water. Would it be nice to have a sign up a bit higher where people can see it straight away rather than have to fumble around?
The director will deal with the lack of the tap and the knee bump.
I must say I've experienced the same in other toilets.
So that's a way of not touching the tap, everyone, isn't it, really? Councillor Coleman, you're done?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. So I'm ready to move on to the report from the Mayor. Mayor's report. Questions without notice. Oh, sorry, I did wrong. Any questions without notice? Sorry, Councillor Yench.
I have
Yeah, sorry.
I have a few, please, Mr Mayor.
A few, right.
Firstly, our briefings in regard workshop with footpaths last week has raised a couple of questions for me. We discussed the Trevena Road opportunity, and this is all, obviously, we recognise it's going out for public consultation, but you indicated that there was roadworks in that precinct, and am I getting it wrong? Is it near the kindergarten, or are you referring to the roadworks opposite the Methodist Church? We were discussing which side of that road the footpath went.
Certainly, Councillor, and I'm sure you and I have probably both privately looked at that area.
Oh, yeah.
And there's some history around that. And the history includes that the Lions Den building is apparently a titled piece of land. And the kindergarten and the history, I'm not sure how we've ended up with two branches of Trevena Road in that area, but we have. So I probably am indicating I might raise something in the next Works Committee, which can't be that far away, around basic drainage design, because the drainage, and that's what I refer to perhaps with the roads, Councillor, if there's not virtually any curbing in that area of Trevena Road, the drainage will lead to assisting a solution with the footpath, but we would need some planning. There's multiple choices, as you'd be aware, in that area around that, but we can go to public consultation despite that.
Yeah, look, Mr Mayor, I totally acknowledge that with the, I believe if the footpath still is placed on the kindergarten side, it gives us an opportunity to rectify their parking area, which is a bit.
So, and that's what I'm referring to in terms of the drainage and the streetscape in general.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, to you, Mayor.
Mm.
Just with all of the footpaths, they'll each have their own idiosyncrasies.
Yes,
So when we do go to detailed design, they will all require their own particular treatment to make them the best footpath that they can be, and some of that will require drainage.
thank you.
Second.
Next one, Mr Mayor, is to do same thing with footpaths, Wellington East. We were talking about the Ferry Road footpath and George Mason Street with this going out for the public consultation. Again, you referred to the works that are potentially going to happen.
So Councillor, we are continuing negotiations and we're going to start driving them a little bit harder, to be quite honest, around Wellington East Water. And you know how much councillors enjoy being putting a footpath down and then having it ripped up for particularly a council project soon after. We're also, as you know, there's been development approval granted for as I suppose shops or fuel stations in that area at the end of. It's not Trilby Road. It's actually got a different name at that end for some reason.
It's between that
between
and
that.
George
And
Mason.
so if a developer came to us with something, there will be some arrangements done with them, and you'd be aware that a extension of Trilby Road to Ferry Road is still on the book somewhere. There's a possibility. So I think, you know, in the very short term, and I might say we need to stick to our highest group of priorities initially around footpaths. It's still a possibility. It also involves a debt road at the end of the day, which makes it probably somewhat more complex, but we can probably start those discussions around the debt road at any stage in that one. But if that ends up being going to public consultation, that'll be the first point, I'd say. I don't know what the speed zone is there. It's probably 80. So that raises some more questions, I think.
It does.
But anyway,
Thank
continue.
you for that one, Mr Mayor. And my last one is to Matt, please, through you. I briefly discussed with Matt activity
He's a
out of Big
director.
Olive.
He's a director.
Sorry. With the footpath out there, have
where?
you been able to obtain any clarity, please?
You were referring to which area, sorry?
Out at the Big Olive, there appears to be a lot
So
of footpath.
Tuscany
footpath
Road and
activity,
the activity, and there's a new
carving of soil.
guarding of soil along the road-related area. Matt, yeah, I'd love to have the answer too.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mayor. We have had a look at that area to backfill some of the curbing where there's been some issues. What I understand is that some material has been placed there, and the material that you are alluding to is probably not appropriate. So we're arranging for that to be removed in the next coming days, I would suspect. But it is not the appropriate material to be used for backfilling of curb.
Thank you.
So thank you.
I was just going to have a follow-up question on Councillor Councillor Yench.
They're
Sorry.
all bald.
Councillor
Um,
Bland, if you've
through
got the
you
right
then
man.
to Matt, when you say that the soil is there, did we put it all there, even the inappropriate stuff, or do you think there's some dumping?
Through you, Mayor, I'd have to check that out. I don't believe that all of the material is being placed by council staff, but
Thank you.
whether it's, you know, if it has been illegally dumped, then we'll need to address that anyway. So we'll just address what's there and take appropriate action.
Certainly a lot along a lot of the road there. Anyway, thank you.
Through you, Mayor, I'll look at it personally and assess the material and make sure that if there is anything there that is appropriate for backfilling of curb, that can stay, but the stuff that is contaminated or whatever, not contaminated, but with material that's not appropriate will get taken to the landfill site.
Councillor Hill.
Through you, Mr Mayor, and this may be a question for the Director of Infrastructure and Assets. Long Point Jetty, and I'll just disclose that this incident involved our boat. We were returning from a tour and we were going to try and disembark our 7 passengers, and there were some young men there with their boats and they refused to move their boats from the Long Point Jetty. Is there some way of signage or something that could say that that's a loading zone and people are not to leave their boats there? I know there was also an incident not long ago with a fisherman that was also leaving his boat there, and the public complained about that as well.
The first question, Councillor, I've got, is it our jetty?
I'm not sure, as I was saying, I was the direct
I'm getting
question.
from the back of the room from an officer, it's not our jetty.
Okay.
So that would be the first issue we have. We can follow up around some signage
Yep.
with the department.
I suspect it's due or bit, and so we can flag with them. And you all know the process from there. We'll flag
Because
with
it's
them.
not a good look with paying, people that are coming to our district to enjoy the amenities and to have that sort of incident.
Yep, certainly. Councillor Qualman, on
Thank you.
questions without notice.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I have two here. Thank you. Through the chair to the Director of Roads and Infrastructure. Now with the weather drying out, are we upping the ante of road patching or pothole patching on Petodic Road? I've been getting some pictures from concerned ratepayers. It doesn't look real good. And I thought, well, now it's dry, it should seal better, correct?
So first of all, as you know, councillor, there's quite a outline in the information document around what we'll do with Petodic Road, but I'll let Matt at this point of the meeting expand on what he intends to do with that in that area. The director, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. We are intending to undertake some heavy patching on the worst, or the spots that will benefit from heavy patching. There are certain spots along Petodic Road that are in a condition that cannot be fixed. They require full reconstruction, which we are going out to tender for very shortly. But the sections that are ready to be or able to be patched with fresh rubble material and a temporary reseal are going to be undertaken. I'm looking at that on Friday morning. We'll be marking out and building a works program to go to either tender or our internal staff will deliver that work. But that is something that we'll definitely be doing in the next month or two with the weather being drier.
Mr Mayor, that answers the first question. I just wanted to know where we're up at the present stage. I knew you got a comprehensive report later on, which I want to talk about when that comes around. The second question, if I may, Mr Mayor, through the chair to the CEO, is next ordinary meeting, I remind the elected members, we actually vote for a deputy mayor.
First item. You remember well.
Mm.
Well, the deputy mayor remembers.
Oh,
Right. Wasn't really a question, councillor.
Oh,
Councillor Bland's no doubt got a
Just
question.
a quick question, yes. And I note the emails going back and forwards in relation to mowing in general. And I'm just wondering, are we short of staff or is it just weather related? Because it seems to be right across the district.
So it's probably through you, Mayor. So it's probably a combination of both. We've discussed whether there's any opportunity for us to look at a bit of labour hire during this time to supplement the staff, and also whether we actually do need another mower rather than carting it between particularly Tintinara and Canalpin, because that's counterproductive in a sense. So we're just looking at options, but our first and foremost, we're looking at maybe some labour hire staff for 3 months, and we might schedule that in as part of our plan every year because we know this is a high growth period.
Leanne, questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. To you, the medium strip in Taylor, we're talking mowing. I note that it has been, someone's run over it, but it is the scruffiest piece of mowing I've seen in many years. I take it that Highways had a contractor in for it.
Yes, so Director will answer the question, I think. He's
Thank
put his
you.
hand up.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. The works that were undertaken on the median strip at Taylor Bend were undertaken by its contractor. I have expressed my concern with the quality of the work that's been delivered. I've
Is
also
there?
contacted senior staff at DIP to discuss the future of the, I guess, streetscape through Taylor Bend
Yes.
along the whole Dukes Highway. As we know, there's a corridor study that is being undertaken from Murray Bridge to the Mallee Highway. That will focus mainly on freight and traffic movement and less so on aesthetics. So in consultation with the CEO, we're going to go to DIT and talk to them about opportunities to upgrade the aesthetics of the entire length of the freeway through Taylor Bend. It'll obviously be a staged process, but it's something that we need to look to address going forward. If it means that council undertake future maintenance of that area in lieu of DIT, then that will be negotiated, but it's something that is definitely on our radar, because the standard of the work that we see as you drive in from both directions of town is something that it's a council reputation thing. It's something that reflects on us rather than DIT, and it's something that we take seriously.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Spot on.
Scruffy, Mo. Yes, very good word. Anyone else? Questions without notice? I do move on. My report, councillors. Thank you to the people, yes, councillor, that assisted with the NAIDOC week. It was my sharing week, unfortunately. And I felt the business update series dinner I attended one at Tailem. It was very good in that we're trying to find ways to engage with the community. Councillor Lang, you've got a question?
I do, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just query your shod turning exercise, why no one bothered to invite the 3 Lakes Ward councillors for this community project.
I'm going to ask the CEO.
I appreciate I was at the symposium, which the CEO was aware of.
Yeah, yes.
The other 2 councillors were available.
It was when the federal government give us the money, generally there's some recognition of that. This was really to mark the occasion with Mr. Passon, because there's such a bit of a delay now between when we got the money, we got everything done, and when the actual project started. So we wanted something to recognise predominantly the federal government's contribution to this project, and also the children who have been involved, or the youth. This won't be it's not the only thing. It was really just to mark the occasion. And it was really Mr. Passon and the Mayor.
I just thought it would be appropriate to ask the Lakes Ward councillors involved as well.
And so, councillor, I have had this discussion.
Would have been appropriate.
Yeah, I've had this discussion with the CEO about this sort of photo opportunity at a variety of levels, and at this stage the presiding member does represent council in them, and I suppose the more interesting part comes, councillor, in the future if we have no wards. Make that quite interesting. And often they are on short notice. I was aware that you weren't there anyway, but I have had a discussion with some other ward councillors around this. Councillor Rountree, you got something to question my report?
Yeah, I have talked to you about it before, the 22nd of September with the Umali Netherton fire meeting. I think whilst it's a great idea, and I applaud what you guys have been doing with reaching out to everyone, it also would be useful to invite other people from that area to go along. I think, whilst it was a certain group affected this year, it could be a different group next year. And the sort of conversations that happened, I just think would have benefited others being there as well.
Yeah, thank you, councillor. And it was the question that I put to the meeting at the end is, do you wish council to be involved any further? And we've left that with the community, given the 19th of November comes up fairly soon, which is a pretty sensitive date in that area. Quite deliberately early, we decided that this would be about the people affected by the fire and not everyone else. It's had somewhat of an emotional characteristics at time, and I think we are going to write up what we learnt and how we learnt it, and what role in any emergency event in the future we take. I think it's not often that local government takes a role in this form. And it's probably because we have the capacity to do it. I think that we did, but I know what you're saying.
My question is whether council needed to be involved is that I look, even as ourselves as supplying water to that fire, would have been useful, not as my role as councillor, but in a role as a community person with access to a lot of water quickly. It would have been a useful conversation for us to have been involved in. So
I take on board what you're saying, and there'll be continual discussions around water availability and actual events relating to the fire, which is actually the purview of the CFS. We, to a fair degree, in this 3 or 4 functions we've supported, and auspicists talked about I suppose making sure that the 14 affected landowners had the appropriate support and an opportunity to come together. I think that'll be how I would best word it. There'll be further work being done around emergency response. Councillors will be aware we have apparently ordered a semi-trailer water tanker and a bogey drive water tanker. And so we can respond better in this scenario. And while we haven't been successful as yet, we have put in some grants around firefighting tanks. And I know in your area, some people have been following up on the old Firewater blue sign. One bloke found it in the shed and sent me a photo yesterday. So I think there's more work to be done in that area, but I acknowledge your thoughts.
Thank you.
Councillor Bland.
If I might, Mr. Mayor, and I note that it's also in the CEO's report, and that is the meeting at CEO and Ralph Community Council.
Yep.
Said various matters. Can we elaborate on any of them?
Oh, I think we're trying to establish a continuous or continuing at least 6-month intervals relationship with the Ralph Council. And I don't think we had anything we had to really conclude in this meeting, and we had quite a look, I might add, at their nursery and probably talked about the opportunities for them to commercially provide to the community, but to us around what they can do in that area, apart from the Mozzies aid us.
So is there any concerns from Ralph itself about work that might need to be done in the area? I mean, the footpath is the walking trails going through, their tourism, be nice if it was booming, given their beautiful museum and stuff that is out there.
Through you, Mayor. I think they, like all Indigenous communities, have been super cautious during COVID. I don't think that cautiousness will dissipate until probably early next year, because the next thing we have is borders opening. And I think there's some fear just generally in all states about how that might happen, but particularly South Australia, with surrounded by Victoria and New South Wales. So I think they've been super cautious. I think they're as keen as anybody to have some tourism happening, but COVID has certainly put a dampener on that. The other thing is that we've been talking in the MRLCTA, the tourism group, about Indigenous tourism and visitors, and that will be on the agenda early next year as well, about how Bill Nemi might connect with Ralph to progress that conversation. And that will be timed with the opening of the trail.
Thank you.
So we just want to have a regular meeting with them where we maintain contact. And councillors, I did attend the Murray Darling Association dinner last Wednesday. I wasn't a councillor, thank you. And Colin Grundy is a ratepayer of this council, and I think we must have U Island must be part of our council, which was U Island. I think he said he had a portion of that, and so is our most near the mouth ratepayer.
I think those islands were actually given back to Crown. He only has Mundu now, so.
Well, he assured me he sent some ratepayer to this council. It was a very interesting discussion because I was unaware of it.
Maybe it's Long Island.
Anyway.
He is right on the boundary there.
He's right on the boundary. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Any further things around my report, please? Just councillors, I might just add something. Murraylands Riverland LGA and also the meeting in Adelaide in a couple of weeks' time. I don't really get any guidance from council. I think the agendas for both of them have been sent to you. I think, Ashley, that's right, isn't it, for councillors? The
LGA.
The LGAs have been the regional and the state. So if you want them, you can be sent them. That's what I'm just being told. But so it's sometimes left to me to vote as I think best. I'm happy to listen to people's views. At the end of the day, unless council felt strongly, it could move a motion out of them. Councillor Lang.
Thanks for raising that, Mr. Mayor. It is a reason why a number of the former council used to go along to the LGA meeting. So the mayor didn't make that decision by himself. It was consensus around the table. And I think it was also discussed at council prior to going to the actual meeting.
Very rarely. Didn't even get the minutes.
And
When we got it,
We
yes.
got them, I agree.
So one of the issues we're having is that the timeframes around these agendas is getting closer to the meeting and then shooting them. So perhaps we might try and, as soon as we get them, shoot them to all councillors. But I take on board what you're saying, councillor. Nonetheless, unfortunately, I would have to, I'd have to have a direction from council. I mean, some councillors is probably not how I would be forced to vote unless I had a direction from council. And this came up last year in the October-November meeting at the Woodville Town Hall around climate change. Some council mayors, because it was only mayors at that meeting or voting delegates, did have direction at that day. Well, I took it from our policy how to vote. But I take your point around these meetings.
From the consensus of the chamber.
Yeah, and unless the chamber has had a chance to give me a consensus, that's where I welcome anyone, whatever form, telling me what they think about an agenda item that requires a vote.
That's for you, Mayor. You will all have the AGM agenda that would come through in an LGA memo that comes, I think about once a week. And it's got a little thing at the top that says, "Dear CEO, this has been sent to your mayor and councillors today." And that the AGM information is in that most recent one that's come through. We can send it out again if you want it.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? No. Council members' reports. Councillor Qualman, you need to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Attended a lovely function at Jaybuck with the little garden, yes.
Oh, you saw that,
I
yes.
saw that, yes.
Thank you. Went well. Tony Passenger was happy. Councillors, Mr. Mayor, September the 28th, from the council member training, prevention and management of bullying in and out of the chamber at Tarleton Bend. I just want to comment. I thought that was a very productive session.
Yeah, Moira did a fantastic job.
I reckon it was well done.
So thank you. We'll convey that to her. Anything else?
No.
Councillor Taylor, you want to add anything to your report?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Ling.
We know Councillor Taylor took your place on Captain Proud back in April. I was wondering if we could have a fill in on what that was about, please. Voyage of Discovery.
Was it in April? I'm trying to find it. Sorry, Councillor.
Voyage of Discovery.
So sometimes when I am not able to, for a variety of reasons, and it's quite often it's actually because I'm asked to do two things at once, I will ask a councillor to take my place in certain things. That would have been the reason that day. I'm damn sure of that. So that's the reason.
Appreciate that. I was just wondering what it was about, though.
No, I was invited, but as you know,
But you don't know what it was about. Councillor Taylor.
Councillor Taylor might be able to assist you.
Perhaps you could fill us in.
My memory's not that good.
You were invited to attend the Captain Proud with the school.
School kid, yes.
With the Tarleton Bend RSL president as the guest of the president.
That's right.
And the which was a journey funded by council. So it was, well, partly funded by council with the $2,000 community grant to take the children on board the Captain Proud to discover things along the way with an Indigenous person who was present, who did a full presentation to the kids of notable artifacts on the river and the riverbank. And you were unable to attend.
That's, yeah. Thank you. And so councillors might note in my report on the 25th of September, the Careship Coorong degustation event. And that also received some support, Kelly, didn't it, from council. It was a very interesting event around the word degustation. It's quite interesting, I think, around native foods of this area. Quite fascinating with that. I'm not going to call it I cannot remember the right word for the building there, so I won't embarrass the Careship around it. It's quite fascinating. Yes, quickly. Yes.
Just also, I noticed Councillor Taylor has been absent physically from many of the meetings of recent, being on Zoom. I believe that should actually be contained in the report. She didn't attend Tarleton Bend at various meetings. She, in fact, Zoomed in from Wellington.
So,
Some
Could
point
be
of
recorded
order,
as a Zoom meeting.
Jeremy.
so just
That
sorry.
is perfectly allowable for people to attend by Zoom, and I think it's wrong
Yeah.
for Councillor Ling to be singling
I'll
out
deal
Councillor
with-
Taylor when I do exactly the same thing.
I'll deal with it, councillor. Under the emergency regulations, which we still have in force, and is councillors can attend any meeting by Zoom. Now, whether the report needs to say that I consider you to have attended if you're zoomed in and locked in. So in whatever format you're in, if you want to put it in your report that you're on Zoom, fine. If you don't, I'm considered under the emergency regulations. It'll become interesting if the government lifts them recommendations and that ability for people to be on Zoom.
Well, I believe
Yeah, well-
staff have actually changed some of the councillors' reports to reflect that they were in the Zoom.
Well, that would be
Point
discretion.
of order that Councillor Ling continues to single out Councillor Taylor when I do
So-
exactly the same thing. This is another form of bullying and it needs to stop.
Councillor, thank you, but I've answered the question. You're deemed to have attended the meeting if you're on Zoom or not in the current environment.
Thank you.
Councillor Yench.
It was the same question, Mr Mayor. I
Straightforward.
accept your response. Thank you.
No worries. That's the way I read the emergency regulations. If someone can tell me different, very good. Okay. We move to council. We've done councillor members' reports. Notices of motion. We have none. Motions without notice, councillors. Councillor Roundtree.
I would like to just have a motion that, so I'd like to move that the council review the condition and compliance of the Canalpin public toilets situated on the Dukes Highway and determine the requirements for maintenance, renewal and or upgrade. And that this expenditure be included as part of the 22-23 annual business plan and budget. I want to get this into the minutes, as a minute somewhere so it doesn't get forgotten about again.
The
So
councillor,
I'll read it out again.
what I'm going to ask you to do is move that formally as a notice of motion at the next meeting. I think it'd be better.
Why is that? It's
Because
not very long.
I think it needs the consideration of council, and it also there's a couple of parts of what you just said. If we pick it up quick enough, that we cannot just say it's in the budget next year. We believe.
Well, I'm happy to change, consider it.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, but once again, I'm going to stand on where I stood. I'd ask you to move it as a notion of a notice of motion at the next meeting. I might just add, I attended the Canalpin toilets on Saturday, and of interest, you can access at least the male toilets, male part in a wheelchair. Whether that's signed to say that is a bit different, but just internally there's enough space in the toilet to do that. But I'd encourage all councillors to formalise things into motions on notice rather than that. Right.
Mayor, what is notices without motion therefore then? Because I only discovered this when I read the minutes again and thought from the minutes we need to start picking up some of this stuff, otherwise it gets missed. So what should we use that part for?
Motions without notice, I would say, are there to deal with some emergency circumstances in an agenda. If the presiding member feels that it could be better dealt with by a motion of notice at the next normal meeting, they can decide that.
Okay.
Okay?
May I have a question on that? Then?
You can have a question, councillor, yes.
I don't disagree with what you've said, except I am wondering then if it's in the agenda, don't bring it up either in questions as a motion without notice, without formalising it, then is it in the right space? So as something comes up, if it's then perceived to
Excuse
be-
me, I can't hear Councillor Bland.
Yeah.
If something is urgent that comes up out of the agenda that may not have come to councillor's notice for whatever reason, is then motions without notice at 7.1 in an appropriate space.
So you mean? No, and we'll look at the order of the agenda. When we get a new software system that builds it, most councils, from what I've seen, put that really quite towards the end of the meeting because it's a catch-all when you need it.
And I think that is how I would think. If we follow that advice, then it should be further in the agenda. Thank you.
It wouldn't be the first time I've asked a councillor to actually formalise that into the following meeting. We need to give due consideration, and I'm well aware that sometimes we haven't, for whatever reason, we need to decide something quickly, but it really something of, as Councillor Roundtree around the Canalpin toilets, really needs the due consideration of the elected members, is the words in the Act. Proper consideration. Anything else? Excuse me. I've moving on to item 1, Office of the Chief Executive Officer's report. This is around community grants, round 1. Councillors, before I start, if councillors, there's a recommendation there. This has been to a council workshop, as you're aware. If councillors want to debate the rights and wrongs of any of those grants, could they please indicate now?
Mr Mayor, can we suspend meeting procedures to discuss this before we go to a motion?
We can, but I'm just taking the point, councillor, is there a large group of those that people object to, or only one or two?
Well, I'd like to make a comment on one that was knocked back, and I agree with Sam with
yes. So my point might be, I know. So if you felt that there was one in that present group you wanted to have a further debate around, I'd ask you we can exclude it from the first recommendation, and then we can debate it later as a second motion. There's no trouble with that.
So you're going to take this as the first one?
I'm asking you,
written there or not?
If you feel one's contentious, I'm happy for councillors to put that aside for the moment and discuss it a little after but I don't think we need to take the whole lot of them and debate every one of them. Agree.
Not also contentious as one that has been missed out.
Yeah, certainly.
Has been deemed illegible, which I would like to speak to.
Yeah, so that'll be fine. So if you've indicated one of them that's in that present recommendation list you would wish to debate separately?
Yes.
Right, can you nominate that, please?
The Ozfish Unlimited Limited.
Right. Is there any other, sorry, Councillor Yench, are you indicating some other one of them too?
Mayor, I'm happy to move. I agree with the Ozfish to come out. I agree with anything else that's not on the list to be discussed outside of this list. Therefore, I'm happy to remove on the other 9.
Let's just get this.
Move that all bar Ozfish go through as they stand.
She got a hand up. Councillor Blank, get your little mic closer to your councillor.
I have a
question, yes.
And it's a follow-up from the discussion there, and that is if we could just, before with the movers.
I haven't accepted the motion yet.
Right,
just
thank
get
you.
us there.
And that is around the Mallinong Hall. And I take what Councillor Taylor indicated previously, and that is that I think there were potential funds available for sporting groups. Has that been followed up? And if so, and give Mallinong a fair chance in relation to the grant, would that be have a subject to on it?
Okay.
The question.
Councillor, so the question is, have we discussed the cost of that defibrillator any further with the Mallinong Hall?
Through you, Mayor.
Yes. The answer is no. Kelly, can you come in the front? You come in the front, please, and find a mic. Or see if we can activate that mic, please, for the purpose of this debate. But the answer is not at this stage, councillor. So you'd wish that to be discussed further, as in excluded from a first motion?
I would like to, I don't want it excluded because if the opportunity for them.
Set aside for the moment.
No, subject to clarification on other funding.
I'm going to ask Kelly to respond.
So through you, Mr Mayor, Mallinong Hall are not a sporting organisation, so therefore they're deemed ineligible.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Mayor, I want to know on what basis the Ozfish would be excluded.
I'm trying to get the meeting to move forward. And so I'm asking if there's any that are contentious amongst the elected members, that we exclude them from a first motion.
I think the
So-
email that Councillor Ling
Yeah,
sent around and it
it
hasn't
take-
been eligible before.
if I can promote the going forward of the meeting and not get it confused, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not saying they're ineligible at all. It might require a separate debate.
I'm sorry, Mayor, but I'm not quite sure what we're doing. Are we debating it, or is councillor?
No, we're not. You're asking me a question. You're asking me a question. So I'm just trying to promote the meeting going forward with at least majority of them that I think there's general agreement, at least getting approved in the first motion.
So I'm going to vote for it as it is.
Yeah, well, you can vote, if that was the case, you could vote for it also separately as a separate agenda item if that was the case. So I've had some elected members say that Ozfish Unlimited could be excluded. I've had an elected member indicate that all the others,
I'll second.
all the others at this stage be, as the recommendation reads, with the exclusion of that, be put up for approval. Councillor Jens, you're still moving that way, I trust.
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Lang, you've indicated your second. So, councillors, we're debating the recommendation as it reads with the exclusion of the Ozfish Limited. Very good. At this stage. All right, Councillor Arthur.
And Mr Mayor, can we put a caveat on that, in that the council will buy and provide the Allenong Hall with the equipment, and the council will buy and provide the trailer for Ozfish, because a $2,700 trailer.
So, councillor, I'm going to
Do that.
Councillor, we're not going to debate the Ozfish one in this motion at all. It's already been excluded by the mover and the seconder. I think, can we put a caveat at all on any of this, would be the question I'd raise around the Malalong defibrillator.
There may be the opportunity for council to do some additional research and provide recommendations back to the organisation with regards to the investment of funds.
Which one?
For Malalong, you say?
Well, yeah.
Well, it makes sense, Mr Mayor, for us to buy equipment when we're supplying it to them, because we get the GST back. We give to them, they got to pay GST on it.
No.
So we
They're
give
probably
them,
GST free, Mayor, councillor, given.
we
it's not
give
for
them a
profit.
grant, that's GST free, but they still get GST when they go and buy that piece of equipment,
They
whereas
will
we get it back.
also be able to get it back if they'll be a not-for-profit.
They still pay GST. They do not get the GST back.
No, that's not correct.
They sometimes can if they're registered that way, councillor. Oh. Is there any debate around the motion?
Just for clarification for me, please,
Certainly.
Mayor, we're just removing Ozfish and Malalong Hall from that.
No, we're just removing Ozfish.
Right, okay, just
Right.
Ozfish.
We're really clear,
we've
the
given
only
an
removal is
excellent-
Ozfish.
Yeah.
At this stage.
Okay.
Is there any debate? No further debate? Okay. Councillor Jens, you close.
I'm happy to close it, Mr Mayor. I think the 9 recipients are extremely good and they will benefit their particular communities. So, closed.
Okay. I put the motion. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. The second one I'll take is a debate. If someone wants to move something around Ozfish, please do at this stage. Councillor Taylor, you indicated earlier you were going to be supporting this. I need something to debate around.
Yep, so I'll move to include Ozfish in the community grant.
You'd approve the Ozfish Unlimited 2,700 as a, to be approved. Councillor Taylor moves that way. Is there a seconder at all? Councillor Round,
But through the chair, I believe this needs to be workshopped and in confidence. we need to go through the policy. I think it has serious flaws in the policy.
So, councillor, first I'll ask the CEO to address
So through you,
this in a
Mayor.
broader sense, since we've had some discussion.
So the questions you asked this morning in your email, or late yesterday afternoon, councillor Ling. No, sorry, I keep getting this caught in my ear. As you can see, I've been playing with it. This particular application does fit the policy. Now, you may wish to change the policy at some point in time, but changing it halfway between when a grant round is called and when it's being debated in council is probably not the time to change the policy. So I'm more than happy if you could point where it doesn't meet the policy guidelines.
Is there anywhere, councillor, you think it definitely doesn't at the moment?
Sorry, without getting into details too much, which I believe should remain in confidence, we have a policy that clearly any group anywhere in the state, if not Australia, can actually apply for a community grant.
And there have been
They're
precedents.
not a community group. So we don't check their membership. There's no challenge on their address even. And because they changed clothes from their last application in 2020, which we still haven't seen results of, and the council still hasn't called for results of, they get another grant within 12 months.
So, through you, Mayor, there are a couple of things there. They are two different organisations. They may have been one morphed from the other, but that's not relevant detail. They are organisations that are more than eligible to apply, so they fit within the policy. The acquittal process for the other one is not reliant on this particular application because they're two different organisations. The acquittal process for the other fishing group that was granted a grant last year is not due until the end of November.
Councillor Jens was next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think could be very dangerous for council to try and pull this apart. We don't have to. It could either stand or fall on its merit on the vote, if there's a vote, whether this group received money or not. Yes, we can look at our assessment process later, but I concur with the CEO. We are partway through, and it is very difficult to change horses partway through. But in this instant, I believe the Ozfish Unlimited will either stand or fall on its merit with the individual councillors' vote. And I don't believe we should be debating it any further in the public arena. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to enter this debate? Yeah, Councillor Taylor, I'm just making sure you will close unless you've got a question.
I haven't said anything yet.
No, we have a seconder. Councillor Roundtree was the seconder. Sorry, Councillor Taylor, you've got a question?
I haven't said anything at all yet about my motion.
So perhaps you speak as you lead to your motion. As I said, I will take the previous discussion with Councillor Lang as a question around process, certainly.
So my concern anyway with this is we have now publicly singled out one organisation where that organisation's application meets the criteria in the current policy document. And I fully believe that had the staff looking at these applications have noted that it didn't meet the criteria, they would have removed it to the unsuitable box. And therefore, not wanting to put the council in any form of negative position now, having gone over, singled out this organisation, I believe it needs to go through with the rest as it was tabled, and the policy needs to be addressed at probably the next council meeting or certainly before the next round of community grants, so that all of those who, the individual councillors, etc., can address the criteria tighten up the criteria, remove certain groups, organizations, companies, or whatever, so that it doesn't happen again. But I believe that now that we have singled them out, it's inappropriate to not give them the grant, and therefore I would hope that the councillors wouldn't put the council in a position of negativity. So I'll close.
Thank you, councillor. Any other councillors wish to discuss this at all? Councillor Roundtree.
As the seconder of the motion, I 100% concur with what Councillor Taylor is saying. We've already been through the process. We're at the 11th hour, and it's actually just a really shoddy thing to do this right at the very end. They've obviously met the criteria, and if we're not happy with the criteria, as Councillor Taylor said, we should sit down and review that criteria for next time. They've already passed it this time, and it's embarrassing that we're even having this discussion.
So, councillors, thank you. We would note that we can bring forward a review of the policy, can be as required by council, but it is within over 12 months since it was reviewed, so we'll probably bring that forward. We don't need a motion around that. Anyone else, councillors, or I will close the debate around the Ozfish. Okay. Councillor Taylor, you'll close.
Can you just read the motion out, please?
Move Councillor Taylor, seconded Councillor Roundtree, that council approve the community grant application by Ozfish Unlimited Limited, $2,700.
Thank you. I will close.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Sorry, I'm just writing it down myself, councillors. Against, please. Councillors voting against this motion, the way I read it, councillors, is Councillors Ling, Yench, Arthur and Bland. That means the councillors voting for it are Councillors Qualman, Simmons, Hill, Taylor and Roundtree. That's carried, councillors. Councillor Arthur, you raised a question of a applicant who you felt could be included.
Of course, it'll sound parochial, but it's the Tidnara Cricket Club. It's a new bloke writing his first grant. And I spoke to him the other day when I was, when it didn't even get to here. And I said, what did you put in? He said, I just in for 5,000 because that was the maximum. The 6,600 they have applied for is the cost of the contractor to do the scalping. Part of that scalping exercise, there'll be 25 blokes, there'll be skidders, there'll be trucks, there'll be front end loaders, there'll be tip trailers. Work involved, that's the way I have done theirs 2 years ago, of 350 tonne scalps. Now, our oval is a lot bigger than theirs, so we're looking at 350, 400 tonne of scalp. The thatch will be taken out of the oval. And it needs to be done mainly because it doesn't affect the footballers, but affects the juniors, particularly at cricket. Now, we had 32 kids at cricket training last Thursday night, the first training. All just hits and just stops, it doesn't run. So it is a big project.
Finally, I'll be able to catch up with it, councillor. Yes.
Sorry, yeah, well, we can catch it because it drops at our feet. So I'm open to suggestion, but I believe we should be putting something towards this because, as I say, it is a big contract. And, like I would say, you're probably looking at $10,000 worth of volunteer hours.
Yep.
Machinery and all that. So I'll move that we allocate $4,000 towards the detaching of the Tidnara oval.
Okay,
I'm happy to second that.
Not council land.
Sorry?
The Oval is council land?
I just sorry, councillors, I'm just gonna, you caught me quickly, councillor Arthur. Councillor Roundtree, I'm gonna ask the Kelly, our council officer responsible for assessing this, the reasons why this was felt to be not eligible.
So the quote says, top making using whatever the top maker is, the debris collection, into our Oval community to supply a minimum of 4 by 3 tonne pickups. And they've actually quoted that as a $400 labour contribution. If they themselves have probably inappropriately or not put enough in-kind contribution towards that.
As I said, I don't think it's the first one he's done.
Okay.
And he had no idea what it's doing.
So would that be the reason why it was precluded from the?
Because of the 50%.
It wasn't,
So
it didn't meet the
when,
50%
So
threshold.
the preference is given to those that can contribute 50% co-contribution. So whether that's cash or in-kind.
So I've got a total project cost of 6,600. Is that, you're saying that's understating the cost a bit?
What it sounds like.
Yeah.
So you may, we go with what's on the actual application. And so if there was to be a discussion around that, I think that the ones that didn't meet the criteria, we would have to go back based on some sort of equity and check that they all filled out the forms properly.
Certainly, councillor Hill.
My understanding is the total amount for the community grants hasn't been expended yet. There is obviously another round available. Maybe that could be resubmitted and maybe some assistance given to them to get it worded properly. And yeah, but we can't just sort of say, oh, they didn't get one, so let's just give them another chance when the other applicants may also want to have another bite at the cherry as well. So I'd suggest that it goes out to the community that there's further funds available and that if they wish to submit another application, they're welcome to.
So councillors, if it was 6,600, though, total project cost as per the original application, if it was 3,300, it would meet the criteria. Is that a reasonable assumption?
I'm prepared to make it 3,300. I think they do need the help to get it done. It's as simple as that. And thatching machines are not readily available. I think there's only about 5 in South Australia.
How do we approve?
Yeah.
If that's council land, and I'm not too sure of the answer to that. If it is, remembering that the lease policy that we brought in 6 months ago was that it's council's responsibility to do the grading and things like that. So if this project is related to that, then it's probably council responsibility anyway.
It's just the surface of the oval. It's not the, it's a treatment of the surface of the oval is what I'm deducing out of this.
I believe it's that.
Because they had too much rain down there.
And they're quite happy to do it.
Is it
But, you know,
If it's council land, then it's our
it is
responsibility
council
anyway.
land, yes.
So it's our responsibility, council.
Sorry, just councillor Taylor. Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Mayor, so that I actually support councillor Hill. If we use one rule for one organisation, we use the same rule for the next organisation. This one has to come back to the policy review, and we can include in the policy review some assistance in grant writing, or to make sure they meet all of the criteria for the grant application, to explain in full exactly what's needed. But if we sort of include this one, why are we including this one and not the next one? And it goes on and on and on. We just encourage, so we just say, I'm sorry, you've been unsuccessful this time and this is the reason why, but we encourage you to reapply and we'll give you some help in future. Meanwhile, we review the policy.
Councillor Bland with a question.
I think before we can go any further on this, we need to ascertain what our responsibility is anyway, because that would then reflect every other oval in the area. I understand the need to get this done. So firstly, can we find out whether it's our responsibility anyway? And therefore that discussion then goes between council staff and the cricket club. And after I have to unfortunately leave it status quo.
I don't know what the seasonal time frame for achieving the result for cricketers or
Mr. Mayor, it has-
footballers is. I don't got no
It
idea.
probably has to be done in the next 3 weeks,
That will.
and they will not be able to play cricket until after Christmas, because the oval, as you can imagine, is
Scalped.
ripped up but thatched. It's a special thatching machine. They go along and picks all the turf out.
So through you, Mayor, we can do two things, as Councillor Bland suggested. First of all, we will find out what the policy agreement is. If it's under the current policy that was implemented a couple of months ago, then it's our council's responsibility to actually do the grading or the scalping of the scalp. That's not the word, is it? We've got it written down there, scalping.
Scalping is the right word.
Of the oval. And through you, Mayor, can I ask the director with 3 weeks as
Oh, it's
time
not
frame?
scalping, it's thatching.
Thatching. All right.
And then you thatch it.
Both.
So is that if in comes to pass that it's our responsibility as council, is 3 weeks a time frame that you can organise somebody to do it?
Through you, Mayor, if it was council's responsibility, then we'd engage the contractor that the cricket club has already spoken to.
Okay.
That would be the most efficient way of delivering the works.
And if it's not through you, Mayor, if it's not council's responsibility, and I'm pretty certain it is, then as Councillor Bland or Councillor Hill suggested, there's an opportunity to come back to the next round.
So unfortunately, it's outside this cricket season. It's a challenge, which is, I'm looking at I'm trying to look at what this compromises in terms of our processes. And I'm looking at that list of 5 things, and the Tailem Bank Cricket Club has asked for some more money, and I think in due course that will be resolved. They've had a little bit of money from us in different forms. The cream shed, I presume we stored cream in that little shed at the end of the railway station at Tailem, is more ours to do with, as in we need to deal with that and as a heritage thing, and we've talked to the historians around that.
It's through you, Mr. Mayor. So the Taliban historians didn't undertake enough level of engagement with council prior to the application. They had a very brief idea, which they had submitted. It is a state heritage listed property, and the proposed works potentially will have an impact on the fabric of the building. So it's one of those projects where further discussions are required with that group, and should council agree to that project, then they can put in another application.
Yeah.
Under the proviso that council do agree with that.
And the other 2 at the top of that list, I both think are in our policy, are just outside of our policy quite deliberately. Councillors, I'm going to allow, with the mover and second's permission, a motion which would be, as indicated by Councillor Arthur, that we allocate up to $3,300. Councillor Arthur has indicated initially 4, but upon further discussion around 50%.
50%.
When I went to school, that's 3,300, which is half of 6,600. Yeah, and we would only allocate 3,300. That's less than 5,000. Is that right? Council, I believe, has the discretion to offer less.
Yes.
Some people over time have disagreed. And Councillor Roundtree, are you in agreement with that? I'm seeing
Yes,
you
I am,
nodding.
Mayor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to allow that motion to be put up for a vote. I'm going to speak. So sometimes, council, we get to get the hard decisions, and we do get the decision at the end of the day. And this one here is shown, I think it's driven by the seasonal condition and the need to get that oval fixed now. It involves another high amount of community input. I don't think it really adversely affects any other unsuccessful candidates in that list, to be quite honest, who have other reasons to be excluded. If we could have put it off till next February or March, if it was just something else, but it sort of needed for the season. So I'm of the view that we can deal with it now. Anyone else speak for or against that? Councillor Yench.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, whilst I have empathy for the club and what the councillor is trying to do, unfortunately, I believe the due process is going to be corrupted if we step out of our own rules. We had a significant amount of engagement over Ozfission, the previous 9, about qualifying for these things. It is unfortunate that there are reasons why this group have missed out based upon the current material that we have. If we are able to resolve their problem via our own means, which there appears to be that option, I believe that should be explored post haste, but I do not believe that we should corrupt our own process.
Councillor Hill.
Similarly, I will probably not vote for this one, simply because we have criteria. It didn't meet criteria. Number 2, there is an opportunity for them to come back and get another bite of the cherry. And number 3, if it was so time critical, what would happen if there was no grant system? What would they do then to get it to achieve their ends? And so I concur with Councillor my brain, that it's sad, but it's not, we had a very long discussion, and I think we need to stick with the policy.
Anyone else for or against? Councillor Qualman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been listening with great interest, and I concur with Councillor Gans and Councillor Hill, and I feel for Councillor Arthur and.
Don't feel for me. I don't play cricket, mate.
The point you're making, Councillor.
Feel for the kids.
And the kids, but we've already pulled that one out of the list, and now we're creating another one. So
hang on, it's gone back in.
Yeah, so I think it's left a bit too late, unfortunately. We've got other means to do it. Yes, hopefully we can assist.
Okay, I probably didn't make myself real clear in that. What is council's role in terms of the surfaces of our at least 5 ovals? And that's probably at what point yeah, I'll be right with you. Just that's probably a question in our policy that's a little bit unremarked, and I can talk for a long time around provision of watering systems on ovals and who paid for it, but I don't need to.
So through you, Mary, I'll just ask the director what he just sent to me in an email about the scarifying.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. I'm sort of a bit of a thought, but I would consider the scarifying of an oval renewal of the surface. So the mowing and the irrigation, you'd consider maintenance or operating. And I would have to look at the lease, but if it's a council asset that requires renewal and it happened every 5 to 10 years, then the scarifying of our ovals would potentially be council's responsibility as a renewal activity rather than a maintenance activity, which would be the responsibility of the clubs under their management lease. So it's something we need to look at, but it could well be that the scarification of the oval is something that council do as part of their renewal budget on each oval every 5 to 10 years. But what the lease says is what the lease says. So we'll need to check that, but I think that's an option going forward.
So I think the old leases are silent on most of that. The new lease is specific in that it's council's responsibility.
Councillor Bland.
Oh, through you on that information, which until we look at the lease, but it also brings up the renewal of quite a few ovals that are probably in a similar condition, and that it may be something that we need a report to come back to council on when we get an opportunity to assess them, given the season that has been had across the area for some of these problems. I too am sad that they are not able to meet the criteria at this point. My heart always goes out to kids like everybody, but I'm going to stick with the policy.
Councillor Roundtree.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 questions. Do we know, like, obviously the end result here is we want these kids to be able to play cricket when the season commences. Was it identified, and I may have just missed it, what the council can do to help this situation in the short term? And B, and it's probably a question maybe for Councillor Arthur, what is their plan B? Like, is there, if they don't get this done, and probably further than what Councillor Hill said, why is it left so late? What will they do? And we want them to play cricket, and what is it that is within council's ability to actually help them get this done, and sooner rather than later?
So I might help you, councillor. I think there's now three options. The motion gets up, gets done with a contribution from council through this process. 2, we review the policy and the lease, and council, perhaps still with the good help of the community, pays for the part of the scalping. 3, we decide the policy, that the staff decide that the policy doesn't allow for that, and at this stage we do not contribute to it. In the meantime, cricket season's on. So I'll leave you with those thoughts. But Councillor Arthur, you might want to add to what Councillor Roundtree's question is.
Yeah. I'll just finish, close the debate with the thing. It's been a process that's been going on for some time. It's been very hard to get a thatching machine. It's been looked at for nearly 9 months, and it's only 3 or 2.5 months ago we was able to find a thatching machine that could do the job, and that's only after we found out from Pathway Football Club. It needs to be done desperately, particularly for the cricket. The football doesn't matter because it's not soft and spongy for them fellas. And we have got a huge amount of young kids down there at the present moment. As I said, 32 out the first night of training. And they're going to have to learn to bat and run the ball along or get it up in the air. So they're not going to be taught properly. The community, once again in Tindanara, is prepared to put the money in to do this. So, you know, like my motion is that they'll pay through. We get 3,300 from the council, and the community and the cricket club will put the rest in, which we always do. And can I just make one comment on that, Mr. Mayor? The recent successful drought relief money, which the council gave of 250,000, and then because they were the Tora were successful for the 4th year in a row of applying for the Office and Recreation and Sport grant, that got them another 225,000. The final figures was presented at their meeting the other night. The total spend was $832,000 with an estimated $240,000 in kind work. So $1 million project.
Okay.
And that's the strength of the community.
Yeah, thank you. Always strong there. I'm going to let the CEO say something. I'm going to put it to the vote.
I'm just picking up, thank you, Mayor, on what the director said. I am fairly certain that it's council's responsibility to do that work. And if there's a contractor already lined up, then the director will work with the cricket club to get that work done within the required timeframe. Because otherwise, it could look, if it's our responsibility as council, and then we pay a grant, we're basically paying ourselves, which is, I've been trying to avoid.
Okay, I'm still going to, unless the councillor wishes to withdraw on that information, but I don't, I'm looking at him, he's not likely to. So I'm going to put that to the vote.
Just a clarification, please, Mayor.
Certainly.
So what the CEO is saying is that it is council's responsibility to fix this problem. And so if this vote doesn't get passed now, the kids are still going to get to play cricket because the council's going to solve the problem under another means. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. And the risk of passing the motion, and I'll have to, is that the motion actually then says that we're paying ourselves to do some work, which doesn't make sense.
No, I agree. Thank you.
Councillor, you and me need to think about whether I should ask you to withdraw this now on that information. I think we end up in a very compromised position.
Well, the thing is, it's in a very compromising position. I'll withdraw the motion and hope that's
Well, I
right.
support
But
that.
it is imperative it be done, and the community, as I said, were prepared to put in. If the council was to pay for it, they're still prepared to put money in to pay the council.
I think we've got a positive result.
Of the cost.
Either way, the council will pay it. Thank you,
Yep, thank
councillors, for thinking through that. And I suppose for us, it raises in the policy, and you'll notice there's one around Peak Oval a little bit later today, around whose responsibility is the playing surface. And we think through this widely, bowling greens, and there's a whole variety of things. Croquet courts, we still haven't resolved that issue, have we? You know, so there is quite a bit more to this than meets. I'm taking that as, unfortunately, after all of that debate, it was withdrawn, and I'm taking it that our staff will endeavour to work with the cricket club at Tintinara ASAP to get the Thatcher in. Councillor Jentsch, before I go for a break, quickly.
I'll be extremely brief, Mr Mayor, and it's through you to the CEO. Do you require a motion from us for you and the exec to proceed this way?
No.
It's right. If that's the case, that's it. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, item 2, local government conference. There's a recommendation there. Can someone move that, please, if they wish to? Councillor Bland is the mover. Councillor, is there a seconder anywhere? Councillor Lang. Any discussion? I am indicating I'm going to a break in a second. Councillor Taylor, though.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't see any value to the ratepayers for this, so I won't be supporting it.
No, that's fine. You're allowed to not support them. Anyone else?
Just a question,
Yep.
please, Mayor.
Quickly.
Does a car get provided for this event? Is a car provided?
CEO shaking her head.
If the councillor
Okay,
came to me under the current policy, it would be considered. It wouldn't be inappropriate. But
Okay.
I've had no request.
Okay, thank
No
you.
request been put in this stage, councillor.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I can respond to that if you wish. And that is, I will be going, if I am given the privilege to go, I will be going down under my own steam.
Steam age is gone, councillor, but anyway, thank you for that.
We are of a certain age.
The steam locomotive's in the playground. Okay, councillors, I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Sorry, I just need to see who's against. Councillor Taylor is against it, but all other councillors are in favour. It is carried. Sorry, councillors, I probably need a 10-minute break myself. Yep. 4:54.
I'll second that.
We'll break for 10 minutes and be back here at 5 minutes past 5, please.
Stopping recording.
Need
to stop recording.
Walk away.
I think you'll find that it's ours. I think you'll find it's ours.
Okay, here's our chair.
So what I'll do now is I'll circulate this policy. You'll come in. You can mark it up. And we'll have a conversation. No. It needs some time. That's great. But not the themes and the flavours. Why is it just?
Thank you. He got close to me, so I was talking to him a couple of times. Advising this before we come, so he got close. I don't care. One of the issues I couldn't cope with is I feel I can't. it's hard to shut someone's voice down.
Yes, you can mute. Just put them up.
Don't standing up and standing fist, standing the bloody hammer. I don't know what you don't do it here, but it seems to work better in here. Yes, this.
And I don't think you will. Yeah. No, but he was sticking up.
No, because it's outside the pole. I've got two councillors back on screen. Councillor Taylor, you there? Yeah, she's there anyway. Yeah, and Councillor Roundtree's there. Thank you. Presume they're live. We're up to agenda item 9, councillors. Council policies, of which there is nil. Just noting that though, we will circulate the, whatever is it, the CEO.
We'll circulate the policy around the community grants in line with what we had agreed a couple of months ago for you to provide your comments, markups, and then we'll bring it back to council. I suspect at this time frame, probably the January meeting.
Would
Well,
that
it's
would
fresh
that
in
include the
your mind.
procedure?
Pardon?
That include the procedure document?
Uh,
The procedure document is separate to the policy?
I would like the markup on the policy and then we'll look at the procedures to support it. Yep.
Okay. 10.1 is the Tintinara War Memorial Hall Committee minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of September. Councillor Coleman, you moving that way? And there's a seconder. Councillor Arthur. Any discussion?
I'm just waiting on an answer if we can get the tongue oil to redo the floor.
I was interested in what tongue oil is, or how do you say that?
Tongue,
Whether you, councillor, may have, danced that floor before.
yeah, it's been done by tongue
No,
oil.
whether you-
before, yes.
Danced it, or was I more
Many years ago.
That would have been worth seeing, I imagine.
So you Mayor, we're putting that into and looking at it from a maintenance perspective. So we haven't worked out how or when, but it's certainly on discussion.
Any further debate? Being none, closing, yes. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, it's carried unanimously. Number 2, the Canalpin District Soldiers Memorial Swimming Pool and Caravan Park Committee, the minutes, the meeting held on the 13th of September. Councillor Roundtree, you're moving that way.
Yes.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Hill, thank you. Any discussion around question, Councillor Bland?
And that is, at some point, can we please have a costing on, or some information on the cost of the pool staffing for the swim season? And also, I note we're now looking at lighting. Have a bit more of an update on what we're actually looking at and the potential costing on that.
So the staffing we can provide quite quickly, councillor. It's in our budget, the casuals every year, and as you'll remember, the new position was the only new position for this year's budget, so we can provide that. The lighting, we haven't, as far as I'm aware, Director, costed that yet. That's a new request, so we haven't looked at it.
And will that impact on staffing as well? In the long
The
term?
potential is there, yes, so we'd have to consider all of that.
We have as well. Thank you.
Councillor Lang.
With the lighting, would we look at, consider solar?
Yes, we would look at solar. Councillor Bland's question is probably more the relevant one in terms of staff.
Yep.
Opening it up longer I think it's important that we make that facility as accessible as possible, but it will come as a cost.
Which we've already put into our budget this year. Not
Okay,
unexpected where
yes.
we're heading with this. Anyone else? Councillor Hill, Councillor Roundtree closes, sorry.
I'll close.
Okay, all those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. 11, Corporate and Community Report, the certification of the 2000.
This is procedural.
This is procedural of the 2020-21 financial statements. This is simply the authorisation for us to sign it. It's not
I'm happy to
approving.
move, but I have a question.
Yes.
If the purpose of the report is to authorise the Mayor and the CEO to sign the certification of financial statements in their final form once completed, and then we're having a meeting in November on this matter, should we not, from a procedural perspective, are we doing it the wrong way around? Should we be doing this after we have the presentation of the financial statements in their final form before we authorise you to sign anything?
Through you, Mayor, it sounds like that might be the case, but that's not quite. It's the basically gives permission for the mayor to sign it. The reports still come to council, the council endorse them or otherwise, and then following that, the signing takes place. So we could have probably had this at the same meeting, but it's really procedural just to give the mayor authority to sign, but it's not out of session or anything like that. The reports will still come to council at the meeting where they're deemed, I think it's next meeting, month, November.
So you could say once completed and presented to council.
So councillor, I wouldn't be signing anything that didn't have council's authorisation for anyway.
Rightio. Okay. Just wanted to check on the.
The last things that I asked for the minute that authorised me to sign.
I'm happy to move that way.
Is there a seconder? Sorry. Councillor Qualman is the seconder. Any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Arthur, you
Yes,
make me so happy. That's a yes?
Yes.
Yes, right. Those against is 0. That's carried unanimously. Community Land Management Plan, Peak Oval, councillors.
I have another question as well on that one, please. Mayor.
Certainly. You want to move that way or just ask the question?
Yes, I'm happy to move that way. I just wanted some clarifications from the Director of Community and Corporate about what the minor amendments were. They weren't clear in the document, so if he could just run us through what they were.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. And just to note that in the future, what I'll do is I'll actually submit the track changes so you can see what the amendments are, even if they are minor. In this case, it is the inclusion of the plan that you see here, which shows clearly the land parcel. And the other amendment essentially is to enable this to be a standalone CLMP for this parcel of land. Previously, they were bundled together as assets such as oval. So to comply with the Act, we need to create single land management plan for each parcel.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Lang is the seconder. Is there any further discussion around that? There's none. You're closing, councillor.
Closed.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. 12.1, report on the review of the Tintinara Cemetery irrigation. Councillor Bland, I think that was your voice.
It was.
Yes. Councillor Bland, thank you. Lost that of my
Happy to second it.
Councillor Bland is the mover and councillor, I think Roundtree on the voice is the seconder. Any discussion around that report, councillors? Councillor Qualman will start.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Executive summary, the point 2 says proceed with a once-off clean of all impacted headstones. Have we got a rough costing of that, please?
CEO will have a crack at this one.
So through you, Mayor. So the overall cost to clean all of the headstones impacted, I sent in an email to all of you probably 8 weeks ago now, which was around about the $105,000 for all of them to be cleaned. In the meantime, we have been working closely with the insurance company to prod them to think whether it's an insurance claim or not. We've had one discussion with them. They seem to be agreeable to the ones where people have actually complained, but not the others, which takes it up to about half of that cost. So our best scenario is that half of the costs will be met by the insurance company. The worst scenario is that none of the costs are met by the insurance company. We don't know the answer to that yet, and they're still deliberating. They said we'll have an answer by the end of October.
Thank you. Councillor Arthur.
So I'd just like to query the actually consumption figures because I read the meter in January and I read it again on the 28th of May, and it's only 700 kilometres, $2 at the top rate of $2.73. That's only about $1,200. I'm just wondering if and I did notice that the system was watering in May and June when it didn't need watering, so it probably only doesn't even need to be switched back on now, whether it is or not. I'm not sure, because it switched it back on at the meter, but is actually controlled from the control box within the oval complex, which is the CWMS water. So I wonder if the infrastructure and assets manager could just have a look at that and just find out what's going on there, because it still needs to be on to have water available for the people to put their pots and their flowers in and that sort of stuff.
You want to comment, Matt?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, the numbers quoted in the report are directly from the SA Water bill. So if there's anything untoward going, then we'll need to investigate, but that's exactly what the bills issued by SA Water said. I'm not aware of the detail of the operation of how the irrigation works, but I'll look into that. But the irrigation is currently still off. The water is still available for people to fill pots. So we'll get back to you on that one, Councillor.
I'll make another comment. The local gentleman sent me photos yesterday of the before and after of one of the headstones, his mother-in-law's headstone, which he cleaned up as a trial. And I'd like to show it to both the director after. And he tried various different uses of the stuff to get it off, and what he's come up with in the end has been pretty, come up very, very well. And it's maybe worth looking at.
So, yep. At this stage, this is a report and it doesn't commit council to cleaning them until we have a discussion around the insurance costs and where we'll go with that. Councillor Bland, you want to close? Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Item number 2 is sealed roads update condition assessment. There's a recommendation there, councillors. Councillor Bland, you're asking a question.
I am asking a question,
Yeah,
and that is that I notice we're using, I think it's IMG. For this, are we not using ascetic anymore for any of this?
Through the Mayor, the IMG is a contractor to Ascetic. They work in partnership. So Ascetic manage the asset management software. IMG are the contractor that do the condition assessment on the ground.
Then I'll move the report.
Councillor Bland moves. Councillor Qualman. Councillor Qualman is next in my eye. You seconding it?
Want to ask a question?
You ask the question, please. Yeah.
May I?
Yes.
Yes, good.
Yes, sorry.
That's right. Thank you, Councillor Bland. Mr. Mayor, that's the question I had, that who was this IMG, and is this IMG another excess burden on the budget, or it's just part of assets, comes in the bundle of what, 80,000 assets, ascetic charges every 4 years, whatever it is?
Through the Mayor, the ascetic service is an annual fee for the asset management software that we use to record and collate all of our asset data. IMG is the independent condition assessment consultant who we would engage, whether it's IMG or another, every 3 to 5 years to do an independent condition assessment of our road network. We'd use similar companies to do an independent assessment, stormwater, any of our assets. It's a process where we reset our condition data by using independent service. It basically creates an impartial opinion of what our condition of our assets are, rather than using council staff who are qualified to do so. But it just creates, it's like an independent audit as such of our assets. So that's why we engaged IMG. There's other companies that we could engage, but on this occasion, IMG were the successful consultant that we picked.
And Mr. Mayor, through you to direct again, this is a legislated requirement, correct?
I don't believe it's legislated. Through you, Mayor, I don't believe it's legislated, but it's best practice to do so.
It's the only, through you, Mayor, it's the only way we can make sure that our financial arrangements and numbers correlate with what's actually happening in terms of the asset and the valuations.
You prepared to second it, councillor?
And I'll second it.
Oh, you're very good.
I have a question.
Yeah, councillor Roundtree, you've got a question?
Sorry, I'm blurting out, but I'm not sure if you can see me sometimes, so I thought I'll just make a noise. I just had just a couple of things I want to just be clear on. The pavement that's under the sill is assessed by using this company. But how do they do the process of assessing what's under the sill if they can't see it? Is that, I don't actually have no idea how that occurs, but obviously it must occur.
So through you, Mayor, the Director will answer that, but this is something that every council in Australia does. So they have techniques, but I'll let Matt explain that.
So through you, Mayor, there's certain failure modes that occur in roads. Several of them are contributed to pavement failures, others are sill failures, others are both. For example, rutting in a road, which often can't be felt driving along the road horizontally, but it's where you'll find majority of your potholes, and that's due to a pavement failure underneath the sill. Things like roughness can be because of being sealed over a potentially partially corrugated pavement. Potholes can be either a sill failure or an underlying pavement failure. They use laser profilers on their vehicles that take a cross-section of the road pavement, which gives a measurement of how deep rutting is. They also have sensors on their suspension on the vehicles that measure the roughness, so a roughness count. They also have numerous cameras on the vehicle that take video and photos that pick up things like cracking and potholes and defects. So they use a combination of those three technologies as well as people in the vehicle to take observation notes to determine the condition. So different failure modes indicate pavement condition and other failure modes dictate sill condition. It's fairly complex, but it's certainly it's something it's industry used. It's not something that was, I guess, we're doing on our lonesome. But it is a complex process, and using automation is far easier than doing it individually.
So if you consider under the sill conditions, 75% was considered excellent to good. So that was looking at the first two categories, and you apply that to the pavement, it's only a 0.5%. So what they've done is, or what council have done, I suppose, is looking at fair to poor. They've included, if you look at only fair to poor, it's 99.5% of pavement is going to need some work.
Yes.
So it depends whether you put that fair group into the positive sector or into the negative sector. When they looked at sill conditions, they only took the first two bands and called that 75%. So I think the report does say that, lack of work done previously on roads, a high percentage of the network will deteriorate into poor and very poor condition at the same time. And that is definitely a liability for this council, and something we're obviously going to have to, I don't know, and I don't know how you do it, but it's going to obviously have to be factored into the future years before they get to the point where they're all really bad. When you talk about acceptable service standards, is there a methodology for that, or how is that determined?
So through you, Mayor, Councillor Roundtree, the acceptable service standards is something that will be a decision that we will make, or you will make as a council. It's a measure of the overall condition rating. So you might choose as a council to say that we want all of our sealed roads to be at a condition rating of 2. I will then do an assessment of that and do some scenario testing and determine what our current condition is and how long it would take to get our condition rating up to a 2, which will therefore indicate how much money we need to spend. So it's an iterative process in determining what our condition would like. There's the difference between what we would like it to be and what we can afford it to be.
Yeah.
So that's a process that I plan to take you guys through in the next 3 to 6 months as we try and develop a really robust and thoughtful asset management strategy that will enable us to deliver a sound network, not only for just roads, but all of our assets, and make sure that it ties with our long-term financial plan as well. So to answer that question now, what's a condition that we would like is, because everyone wants a perfect road. So everyone wants their road to be a condition number one, but that's just not feasible or economical. So it's a difficult question to answer straight up. So hopefully that gave a bit of context, but it's a process that we plan to work through.
I think the report is actually quite good. And for the first time, I think in a long time, we've actually got, I feel, a pretty good handle on what we're facing and what it's going to mean to council. So I feel informed, which is a very good thing.
Any other councillors with questions? Councillor Bland, you'll get to close.
Consider it closed.
Okay, councillors, you have a recommendation there to vote on. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously, +1 with Councillor Arthur voting twice with 2 arms. Item 3 is a recommendation there to council receive and note the report around purchasing and monitoring and storage of fuels.
A question?
You can have a question first.
Could I just ask that Matt give us a bit of an overview of that? I know that we have fuel depots at different areas, and I'm trying to get my head around the options and the potential, or I'm also interested in whether or not we're concerned about misappropriation of fuel.
I'll start for you, Mayor. Answer the last question first. No, we're not. But we know that as soon as any process has manual handling, the potential for human error increases. So this report is to flag with councillors that we are looking at other options similar to Tailem Bend in terms of whether it would be economical to replace the underground tanks that have a manual component with the above ground tanks similar to Tailem Bend and eliminate that manual. But there is no, it's not done with the eye of any thought that there's misappropriation. We just know that any process that has a manual component always has an error rating higher than an automated one.
Councillor Qualman's next.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through the chair to the Director of Roads and Infrastructure. And concur what the CEO says. I mentioned that the digital system that Tailem Bend has is quite efficient. So if we had all our fuel depots digital, we'd be able to just slap in the computer and see how much fuel we got and see how much is gone and keep a very good close eye on it, correct?
Through you, Mayor, that's correct. There is also opportunities where we can have remote monitoring so that information is sent back to the council officers, so we don't actually even need to go out to site to record it. So it does take the manual or the human error out of recording of the fuel. It also enables us to record quite accurately what plant is using fuel and what operators are filling the machines more regularly.
And how much we got in stock.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Councillor Lang.
Just a couple of questions, if I may, through the chair, to the director. I note that this particular item only refers to diesel. Do we have something else for other fuels? Your unleaded for your admin vehicles, similar for wool lawn mowers and all that sort of thing? I know that became an issue some years back with new council. And
so just through you, Mayor, the admin vehicles are actually use fuel cards at a service station. We don't use a tank arrangement for them.
And through you, Mayor, we haven't gone down the track of monitoring the use of fuel on our small plant and fleet with the snippers, chainsaws and whatnot. It's something we certainly could do. Most of that fuel is dispensed through jerry cans or the like. So it's something we could certainly look into. I guess at this point in time, we're focusing on the fuel that takes most of our time, and that's the diesel side of things. But it's certainly something we can address and look into. I don't see it being a huge issue at this point in time, but we will take note.
And second question, if I may. I note the comment in regard to the underground tank at Meningie and be the same elsewhere. Any reason why an underground tank, which I believe would be better unless it's nearing its end of life, couldn't be converted to digital? And then we have to remove the tank out of the ground at great expense to put an above ground tank.
Through you, Mayor, we would have to look to see whether retrofitting a tank would be economical or not. It's certainly probably an option you'd look at. Retrofitting is not always the most efficient or the most economical, but it would be something we'd look at if we were going to move that way.
Through you, Mayor, one of the other things that the underground tank causes problems with is when we have a power failure. We need another petrol powered or diesel powered pump to take take fuel out. The above ground tanks, we can dispense fuel by gravity, which enables us to service not only our vehicles, but in the case of emergency service vehicles as well.
I haven't got a mover or a seconder yet.
I'll move.
And I got 5. So councillors Lang and then Qualman are the two that win the prize for that. Any further debate, discussion around this? Being not, I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Item number 4 is the waste transfer station opening hours. Does someone wish to move that way? This is just confirming what after the trial. Councillor Ling, are you confirming you're going with the motion as it reads?
As it reads.
Recommendation. Is there a seconder? Councillor Yench is the seconder. Is there any discussion? Please, Councillor Qualman. I mean, I knew you were going to have this.
Yes, you're right, Mr. Mayor. I'm totally opposed to this. There's a couple of questions I have. In the report, it shows the trial times, but it doesn't show the original operating times. That's my first question. The other one is, I was under the impression when the trial commenced that we would be collecting statistics on how many people were using these transfer stations. I don't see any information regarding that. And no specific reasons given why we're cutting back on our transfer stations, and where we cut back on our office. Now we're cutting back on a service of our transfer stations. So I'll be voting against it.
So remember the original reason why we changed this was because the span of hours for the casual staff was too long. We would have had to have a break, and that was just difficult to manage. So these hours were to ensure that staff could work the span of hours without having a break and without us having to provide coverage for that particular time. I know that had been the process for many years, but it was not appropriate. The second thing is the usage of the transfer stations has not changed at all. Maybe marginally, 1 or 2, but it's certainly not changed. And we've had 1 inquiry, and that was on the first day, which I suspect somebody got confused.
You can go on, Councillor.
Can I go on? Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I would remind the CEO and fellow members that it's just starting to get into the grass growing season, as we all were. And I think the transfer stations now, if we were recording statistics, would indicate a lot more patronage will now occur as people do their springtime cleanup. Thank you.
Please, you think the grass is still growing, Councillor. It's not in the north end of the council. Who else would like to add something? I do have a mover and a seconder. I've got no one else. Councillor Ling, you get the pleasure of closing. I put the motion as is, as it reads as the recommendation. All those in favour? Those against? So that is carried with councillors Qualman and Taylor voting against it. The other 7 councillors voting for it, so it is carried. Thank you, councillors. Petitions, I move on. Petitions, I have none. Deputations, I have none. I presume there's no public question time because I don't have any public.
We have none.
Have none. So I would move to the information document, item 15. Councillors, have you got anything wish to raise out of the information document? Councillor Roundtree.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank the Director of Roads and Infrastructure, Matt James, for the capital project information. Again, I think it's just very well presented and easy to understand. On page 4 of the information document, the council talks about quarry material to make sure it's going to quarry material. I just wanted to know, are we contacting any of the previous people that work with council as to where all the good quarry sites are and good rubble? Because I think that's a very key factor in making good roads, is the condition of this stuff. And I also just wanted to know where the expressions of interest for people to provide rubble was sent and how it was sent out.
Through the Mayor, thank you for your question. We are contacting existing staff and some previous employees of council. Haven't had any responses regarding the expression of interest as yet. We currently have, we're working at a pit currently, and we have our next location lined up. So we are working very hard at trying to find quality material. As you said, Councillor Roundtree, quality material makes quality roads. And we really are, I guess I wouldn't say desperate, but we're very keen to find good sources of material to continue to, I guess, increase our unsealed road level of service so that our roads last as long as we intend them to. It is a challenge.
Is there a map of where this sort of stuff exists? Because like some people may not know that they even sitting on a site that is good for making roads. And I have a feeling many years ago, there was a map that was in existence that had some of these sorts of good sites marked out, and maybe the owners of those pieces of land should be contacted if they haven't already.
Through you, Mayor, that map's on my office wall.
Maybe where I saw it. Okay, you're on it. That's good.
Is that your only question for the information document, Councillor?
And I also just wanted to thank Miles for his breakdown of the LGA changes and how that was impacting on council. I just thought that was a really useful bit of information as well. So thank you to him. And then my only other question was to the CEO. On the 7th of October, she attended Sustainable Domestic Violence meeting in Murray Bridge. And I was just wanting to ask her if from that meeting, what her thoughts were about our region having enough things in place to support domestic violence victims.
So through you, Mayor. The meeting was arranged by the community and some interested parties to talk about particularly homelessness and issues surrounding accommodation for women escaping domestic violence. There was a lot of information, but there was no conclusions at the end that we didn't already know, that housing is an issue, affordable housing is an issue. I have undertaken to meet with the Minister's Chief of Staff. I think that's her title, I'm not too sure. She contacted me to say, can we have a chat about what might come, we might be able to do into the future. I suppose the thing to say here is that the services for these particular support that's required in the community will always, or 9 times out of 10, be located in Murray Bridge. Kelly and I have been working very closely with some of them to make sure that their grant funding, we understand what their footprint is, and if they have to offer a service into our council district, that they're honouring that, or there's reasons why they're not. It's the reason why when we met with Headspace a few months ago, that there's now been some activity in Meningie, I think down in Coomanduk, down your way, Councillor, where Headspace is saying they did get Murray Bridge centric, and now they're starting to work out how they offer services more broadly. So it was more of an information session without a landing on anything in particular. It was certainly well supported with Mr. Pedrick and the Minister for Women's Safety, I think is her title, and her name is Carolyn Power. And so the ear of government was certainly there, but it didn't land on any particular actions at that particular point. Murray Bridge has got a new domestic violence service, which is serviced by volunteers, which makes me think that it's really just a triage service into something more substantial in Adelaide.
Thank you for that.
Anything else, councillors? Councillor Hill?
I'd just like to say that I really enjoyed the NAIDOC flag raising ceremony at Meningie and the lunch afterwards at the RSL hall. And apparently there's some video footage of Councillor Bland and I doing the shake a leg dance, and I hope it never surfaces.
It's two of us. How much would you like to pay?
You didn't get up.
So to the public, we need to search that out. That'll be
No, you don't.
priceless footing.
It will be
Footage,
discussed.
I would say,
Private viewing
footing, I would suggest, would be very good. Councillor Bland and Councillor Taylor.
In relation to I've got a second one, but I've just lost it.
Yeah, first one first.
The first one is around the LAP program, and I'm just wondering if we could get some information on the Climate Resilience projects for Lake Albert reed planting for erosion control and blue carbon sequestration. I am wondering where that is in Lake Albert.
So through you, Mayor, I'll have to take that on notice.
And I'm happy with that. I think it's good depending on where it is, particularly we do need the erosion. And I'd have to say this report is significantly in relation to that. I don't know how much I can say. There's a lot of work in there. My other question, sorry, was to the CEO through you, Mr. Mayor, in relation to the, I think you sat in on count with Sam Blight.
Yes,
At
on
the-
partnerships.
Correct, at the partnership. And I'm just wondering whether you will be attending in the future in your own right and what your thoughts were.
So just on the mechanics of it, because it's a minister's appointment, we have to wait. So I'll be a silent, and I must admit I failed in that on day one. But anyway, so Sam and I will attend together until the formal notification of the change comes back from the minister.
And my second part of that is, has Sam received the council's thanks?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And the committee themselves, through you, Mayor, are intending to also do a formal thanks at the appropriate time.
Councillor Taylor is next.
Through you, Mayor. So 2.1.3 of the information document, fire season. It notes slashing and spraying programs have commenced. Fuel reduction has been undertaken at Wellington East, Canalpin, Meningie South and Tailem Bend Cemetery. So is that Wellington East Cemetery, Canalpin Cemetery, or is it general Wellington East, Canalpin, Meningie South? My main concern is Pangarinda and what's in place for fire prevention.
So through you, Mayor, I can answer the last one first and then I'll pass to the director. Michael Vivian has a plan every year for the fire prevention for Pangarinda, so he's looking at that. It'll be part of his parcel of work. I can give you further details if you need them, but that would be at a session, but he's more than aware of what's needed there. I'm not sure in years gone by that might have been the case, but it's certainly on his books now.
Not working today.
In terms of the cemeteries, I'll have to pass to the director.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Taylor, through the Mayor. Do you have any particular concerns? Is there a location or from what I understand is that the slashing program is happening. It is a little bit behind, but if there's any area of specific concerns, I can address those.
So either last year, because time flies and I can't remember which year it was, either last year or the year before, the land north of Pangarinda, so there's a large block of land north of it, caught light. I'm not sure what the end result of the reason for it was, but it was only by chance that the farmer next door, Richard Wheaton, spotted it from his land and called it in. And at the time, the land had not been slashed, so it was just ready to go up, and it went up. So it's a concern, of all land, obviously, which council owns, but I just wouldn't want that to repeat.
So through you, Matt, we'll answer that out of session if that's all right, Councillor Taylor. We'll get some more information about that one.
Sure.
Councillor Ling, then Councillor Yench.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regard to Councillor Taylor, Councillor Bland's inquiry about the reeds, they are going to be planted along the foreshore near Lake Albert Road, up in the northeast corner.
Nothing else?
No.
Councillor Yench.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pangaringa, it's page 3 of section 5. They went for a grant for sleepers for seating and were unsuccessful. I believe we possibly should have a significant quantity of sleepers on hand ourselves when we had, unfortunately, the failed projects for the entrance into Tailem Bend. So I'm presuming they're still in stock and they may be made available potentially.
Through you, Mayor. What page are you on, councillor?
It was section 5 and it was page 3 of the report, when it spoke very clearly about, I haven't got it open in front of me, I'm sorry. Pangaringa went for a grant for seating and they were seeking railway
It's in the
sleepers.
section committee
That's it.
tables.
First of all, through you, Mayor, Pangaringa can't actually apply for a grant. It's a council facility. So I know that in the past that's happened and I'm not too sure how, but it's a council facility, so they can't apply for grants. Section 41 committee can't apply for grants either, but I know that that has happened in the past. Don't ask me how. If there is some need, Sam Blythe is always on to what is needed there. So if we have some sleepers or if we need to do some work there, she's in contact generally with the director to do what needs to be done.
Thank you.
Councillor Bland, I've taken you.
Right, thank you. I would just like to make comment on the table that's presented on the section committees. I think it's excellent, but I would like to see an addition to that, and that is land under care, buildings under care and control that are leased out, where we then are about to incur costs, whether it be ovals, town halls, and that if they're not already sitting under a section committee. All of our assets are sitting under a section committee.
So through you, Mayor, that, with your permission, we would do that once we've done the asset management plans for all of our classes of assets, and that should be by about early next year, third quarter of the financial year, Matt. After that, we would then be in a better position to know what the costs would be over the coming years, and it would also be in the long-term financial plan. So that information will be captured in a different way to here. If you're thinking about a similar conversation to the one we had about the Tintinara Oval, we can easily pull out what's the responsibility of council and what's the responsibility of the leasee.
I think what I was trying to find is where we've had a list of requests for things to be improved on some of our leased buildings and stuff over time. And I understand that we're going to do condition assets, etc. And some of those get the Guernsey and it gets up, some never do. But there are still concerns out there in the community, and they've been brought up sometimes year after year, and they never quite get there because up until this, last couple of years, there's never been any money for us to do that. But they do sit then in deteriorating conditions, and somewhere along the line, councillors need to know where those are at. So way of recording it, really.
So if it's a council asset, it'll be captured in the asset condition reports that are coming up. If it's a leased arrangement and the building has the owners, the lessees have some responsibility, we can capture that as well, I think.
I'm probably looking at more leased property.
So most of those, if they're our buildings, if they're our assets, they'll be captured under the asset management condition reports that are happening over the next couple of months. And we'll know then what our liability might be in regards to each of those buildings, which will then be captured in the long-term financial plan, which we will work through with you in two briefings. One is around the long-term financial plan and the other one is the asset management reports when we have a comprehensive group of them. The second question, Councillor Bland, I think is around outstanding items from section 41 committees. My understanding is that list now is what's outstanding and everything else has been finalised. If there's something you know about that's not on there, please let me know.
I think mine's more about, I'm glad these are captured, so I think we can tick them off over time. It's the stuff that's not captured that are leased buildings that are not section.
Can you give me an example so I can?
CCI.
So that will come in under the asset management plans when we do the condition assessment of those. Yeah.
Any other councillors have the information document? Okay, thank you. We'll conclude that. We move to item 16, confidential items. So for those watching the live stream, please be advised live stream will stop. Those who wish to view the end of the meeting, the video will